It's the Friday before the elections. Welcome to Business Live, everyone. As we gear up for Monday's polls, an economist is warning of funding challenges for most of the promises outlined by the two major political parties. Also ahead tonight, Ghana will soon have a bill passed requiring government to give 20% of all its contracts to startups. Plus, how accountable are the managers of Ghana's oil and gas sector will engage the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. Thanks for making a date. Details right after this. We begin tonight with some election-related stories. Economist Dr. Lord Mensah is warning of funding challenges for most of the promises outlined by the two major political parties, the MPP and NDC, in their manifestos. According to him, the global funding squeeze due to the COVID-19 pandemic will compel any government to increase taxes to fund projects. Dr. Lord Mensah was speaking on the business edition of PM Express.
If you are spending now, and chunk of the monies are going into areas that will not reflect in your revenue generation, then trust me, increasing revenue will not work. We're talking about a situation where we've invested in digital address system, for instance. We've invested in, identification of individuals. We've invested in paperless port. We've invested in things that, should be able to identify one or two businesses at, vantage places to ensure that we bring them into the tax net. Now, we are yet to see a reflection of that into, our revenue collection. So effectively, what I would say is that if we are spending now, right, we should think about how that spending builds up into revenue, especially when you are accruing debt. You go into road construction. A typical road is supposed to finance itself. When you construct a road, for instance, from here to Esiapa, right, you expect that in the next 13 years to 15 years, that road will pay for itself. But then what do we see in this country? Can we quantify and say, with the avalanche of portfolio of infrastructure that we have, pick out one or two and say, hey, these are paying for themselves? They are all categorized in the form of kind of a social investment, which we don't even think about the possible, benefit or the possible returns that those investments are supposed to yield to pay for itself.
The business community, who also spoke on the program, expressed worry that a new government may have to embark on excessive borrowing to finance manifesto promises from next year.
Look at how government funds these projects, so that's the way to approach it. One is through taxes, the other one is through proceeds from sales, the other one is through loans and another miscellaneous income. So if I took all of them, in terms, taxes, yes, we do collect taxes and always promise to widen the tax net and collect more. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen to the extent that we expect, even though each government appears to have done better in terms of widening it and increasing it. But of course, I see very little space in terms of funding, except in borrowing, which may then worsen the situation. So we need to be very creative to fund these promises that we are making.
Government revenue sources are limited, taxes. In Ghana, the tax percentage to GDP is about 13.9, 14%. That's inadequate because we are not doing the tax administration correctly. We are taxing so much. The majority of the people or the businesses are falling through the cracks. We just recently published a tax review where we think that tax should not be one shoe fits all. If you're small potatoes, you pay 25. If you're a giant, you pay 25%. No, it got to be a staggered system where based upon your income levels, you pay a certain percentage.
The manifestos appear beautiful, a lot of promises in there. Both parties, especially NDC, MPP, they are all giving promises with respect to industry. NPP is talking about strengthening the one district, one factory and all the industrial issues that are there. I think they're already making a lot of inroads there. NDC is also coming up with its own industrial agenda. So I think in principle, there are promises and industries thrive on finance and both are also promising to make funds available. If you look at the NDC MPP manifesto, they are talking of 100 billion, facility under the CARES program. NDC is also setting up that $10 billion dollar facility. So all these promises are there; they are good. The bigger question is what has been highlighted by the other speakers, that where are we going to generate the funds to support all this? That is the biggest challenge, because we are quite limited in a lot of the sources that we generate funds: taxes, loans, proceeds from sales, the enterprise, state enterprises, their contribution to GDP. We have challenges in all these areas.
While still on the elections, small-scale miners are urging their colleagues to vote for the party with favorable policies to change their lives. The miners say they have analyzed both MPP and NDC manifestos and will conclude on what is best for them at the polls. Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin reports.
At a small-scale mining forum in Obuasi, the miners expressed dissatisfaction with the current government's management of the mining industry. Leadership of the miners say members are not going to vote based on political party affiliations, but rather on the party with better policies for them.
So we are going to vote not on the basis of NDC MPP, but the party that is doing everything humanly possible for us to work and work well. So, which is small-scale mining. That's what I'm trying to say here is we've gone through both MPP, NDC, their manifestos, and we are not kidding. We understand the angle they are both coming from. So what I'm saying is that my position and the kind of people I'm leading, there's no way I'll tell the world that we are going to do.
Vice Chairman for small-scale miners in the Dunkwao area, Benjamin Annan, says he would be doing a great disservice by directing his members to vote for a particular party.
People used to ask questions, Ben, are you NDC or MPP? I don't belong to any of them. I belong to small-scale mining. Because when you talk about NDC, it's about the people. You talk about NDC, it's about the people. And look at the people I'm leading them. So I'm having a very big party, which is small-scale mining. And any government that dare my people, then I think I also engage in any level. So what we are saying is that we are now convinced, but because of my position as vice chairman of this political district, we are having a lot of MPP and NDC. We have read their both manifestos. We know what is good for us. We've gone through both MPP, NDC, their manifestos, and we are not kidding. We understand the angle they are both coming from. So what I'm saying is that my position and the kind of people I'm leading, there's no way I'll tell the world that we are going to do. We know what is good for us.
Mr. Annan says they are still waiting for the leadership of the governing MPP to further explain the party's manifesto.
To meet MPP to ask some few questions in their manifesto, but we haven't gotten that opportunity. Severally we've been engaging NDC, and today we are engaging them. So whenever MPP, because we don't know what they have for us, so maybe tomorrow MPP also can engage us, and they do so, and we are convinced that's where you can draw the line. But as I'm speaking to you now, because we haven't met them, I think our people are also going for what they have understood.
NDC spokesperson for Trade and Industry, Kwame Awua Dako, explains why the opposition NDC is opting for a gold board.
These are people who are entrepreneurs who have had no support from government. You consider a large-scale mining operation. Before they even start operating, they take incentives for tax breaks and incentives from the government. These Ghanaians, these small-scale miners, who are bona fide citizens of our country, get get no such privileges. So the idea or the essence of the Gold Board is to structure them in such a way that they can also access the initiatives and the benefits of some of the larger scale mines, so that their productivity can be increased and their contribution to Ghana can be recognized.
He expects small-scale miners to have the right inputs and implements to enhance their operations.
The challenges we perceive they have. Ore recovery is another challenge we perceive they have. If you talk to the small-scale miners, they are able to, using the equipment they have, extract about 30 to 35% of the gold ore from the earth they clear. We believe that if you give them the right inputs and implements, just like we give to our cocoa farmers, we can increase their ore production or ore recovery to 89–90% and above.
The forum on empowering small-scale miners through the Gold Board was attended by small-scale miners across the country. A report by Mohammed Nuruddin.
Well, here in Accra, sale and demand for party paraphernalia are slowly picking up ahead of Monday's presidential and parliamentary elections. Joy Business visited some market centers to gauge the enthusiasm ahead of the polls. Here's a report filed by Emma Davis and Mildred Dodu.
Speaking to some vendors, they pointed out that sales is not encouraging as expected due to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on the economy and its rippling effects. Others, however, say sales are booming.
I'll be telling lies if I say business is not booming. Customers do not mind the price if they really like the paraphernalia. But for the pandemic, we would have had much better sales. I've been selling for 20 years. All year round, sales are gradual, but when the election is getting closer, they buy as expected.
Oh, I
Sales are better this year. Everyone is looking forward to JD's comeback, so they are buying. Sales are better than last 4 years. For the love of the party, even when we are in opposition, they buy them more. This party, even the colors attract customers. So whether we are in power or opposition, they still purchase our products. Despite the COVID, they still buy. Some even buy them to give them out. In a day, I can sell 4,000 or 3,000, with the exception of paraphernalia we take to the market. In 2016, paraphernalia were purchased a lot.
3,000 a day. Market
Due to the coronavirus, business is not booming like we expected. In previous years, it would be difficult to talk because I would be busy. Trade was 10 times better 4 years ago compared to this year. If we win, the price of the paraphernalia would not be affected. The paraphernalia ranges in prices from 50 Ghana cedis to 20 Ghana cedis.
150 Ghana, it be a 70 Ghana, it be a 50 Ghana, it be a 40 Ghana. Saba abesi 20 cedis. Profit this year me and American and first year fine. Profits na good. A business.
Meanwhile, James Malik Blim, owner of the printing press and the publisher, says COVID-19 has rather come as a blessing in disguise since the political parties had no option but to print paraphernalia, shirts and books locally instead of traveling or importing these items from overseas.
This year looks quite better, even though it became very competitive. We have more unofficial printers also in the system, people who awarded the contract even to themselves and beat the price down unnecessarily. So you are compelled to do something. So we managed to do something. But I may say this time, the way the job comes, it comes through a very long chain. Are you getting me? By the time it comes to you, because you are the professional, at least you just have to handle and get something for fuel. Me, for instance, I have closed down my sessions. It has, because I couldn't pay the workers. Already we were struggling before the COVID came. And you can't keep the workers and pay them. Some of them are with families. So how do you sustain them? Thank God, God in disguise. In another form, as I said, politicians should have sent most of this printing outside. And it have worsened the situation. Now that they are not flying, we ought to do it. So, in a disguise, at least, we can say that those who keep faith with us and stay, at least, we're surviving.
Paraphernalia in different party colors tend to add some spice to the campaign, since many electorates tend to brand themselves in their party colors. But this year appears to have not witnessed the electrifying atmosphere by the party faithfuls branded in party colors.
And communication is also very important during this period. We have a statement coming in from the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications. We want to show that to you right now. Basically informing the general public that its members are taking the necessary steps and measures to provide resilient network quality across the country as the nation heads to the polls on the 7th of December and during the festive season as well. Now, the assurance from the industry association follows individual network audit assessments undertaken by members. The outcome of the audits has led to numerous deployments and actions to ensure a stable network across all areas with potential mass gatherings. The industry is also partnering with law enforcement agencies to facilitate patrol of fiber infrastructure routes across the country. Similarly, the statement said the chamber, through the National Engineering Coordinating Team, is engaging the road agencies to suspend all construction works around routes where critical utility infrastructure exists for the next 2 weeks to safeguard the country from potential network disruptions. That very important statement coming from the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications. Now to one of our top stories tonight. Ghana will soon have a startup bill passed requiring government to give 20% of all its contracts to startups. The bill, sponsored by the Business Development Ministry and some development partners, is also asking for the revenue from communication service tax and royalties put into a startup fund. Head of Joy Business, Odilia Ntiama, was there for the official outdooring of the brand as a partner for the drafting and passage of the bill.
The startup bill, which was launched last month, has had 3 different consultations with stakeholders. When passed, the bill is expected to give startups some tax waivers. 20% of all government contracts are also expected to be given to startups.
Yes, so you see, this is 2 things here. One is that we have one currently in the procurement law that states that state-funded project, 20% of it should be ceded to young people, young entrepreneurs or youth businesses and PWDs. This one, what it means is that a part of the project. So for example, if you are the one taking the contract, 20% of it should be given to a young person. Maybe the young person can bring the labor, can bring maybe cement or whatever and get paid for that. But here is the case, we are trying to push for a component and say that 20% of it, let's say if at the end of the day, the whole project list we have in the county is about 200, we want 20% of this to be given to young people so they can be supported to execute the project. You see, at the end of the day, only the big companies go for the project, and you know, it's like you are a startup, you can't do it. How then do we encourage the growth of them? If a young person who wants to be a constructor, who wants to be a road contractor, but because of other things that they are not able to get, you say you can't give it to them. But if these people are giving such opportunity, you are encouraging them. Definitely they will work with the big people to learn.
Project coordinator of Startup Working Committee, Sharif Ghali, says to avoid shifting the goalpost by successive governments on their plans for startups, it has become urgent to put such a law in place.
If you look at the MPP, they have a promise about cutting taxes, which it goes a long way to affect the lives of startups. And if you look at the NDC, talking about if you start a business, they give you 2 years tax waiver. So these are all disjointed promises. This is why we are pushing for the startup Act, so that I can bring all these things together and give you a very strong support that you can grow your business. 2 years tax waiver, ask yourself, what will it do? Because we know research have it that at least businesses break even within 5 years. Now you are giving me a tax in my first 2 years of operation. It's nothing to write home about.
The bill is also asking government, development partners and the private sector to contribute to a startup fund, which should include royalties.
These are the proposals we identify, that you want to set up
up a fund, where are the source going to come from? So that's where we listed Exim Bank, we also listed royalties, and then we mentioned the CST, because we know there's a component in this communication service tax that is supposed to go for youth development. So we want that at least a part of it should be contributed to the fund. So that was why we were, clearing, we tried to clear those points so that we will see where the sources will come from. But hey, this still depends on the government. When we push this to the ministry through to cabinet, I'm sure they are still going to work on it. Parliament themselves will sit on it, and maybe there are so many other areas that we can be able to get funding from that will be able to fund the startup fund we are trying to establish.
As part of multimedia strategy of supporting young business owners, it is partnering the Business Development Ministry for the passage of the law. Head of Joy Business, Udilia Ntiamwa, said the Joy Business brand was there to support young entrepreneurs achieve their objectives.
All right, you're watching Business Live. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be talking oil and gas revenue and why you should be concerned about accountability. I have a guest from PIAC. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the program tonight. The Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, which monitors the use of petroleum revenue, says it is unable to report on the programs and activities undertaken with an amount of approximately $170 million disbursed to the annual budget funding amount, ABFA, for the first quarter of 2020. The ABFA is a portion of revenue, petroleum revenue used to support government's budget. Now, in its 2020 semi-annual report, the committee said it was also unable to provide an update on the status of unutilized and unaccounted for ABFA funds, which stood at 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. Chairman of PIAC, Noble Waja, joins me via Zoom to discuss this. I can't help but ask what is happening here. Explain to us what the challenge is.
Hello?
Can you hear me, Mr. Waja?
I can hear you well.
Great. So my question is, explain to us what the challenge is really, why we are not able to account, or government is not able to account for oil and gas revenue.
Well, as PIAC has reported earlier in its annual semi-annual report 2020, we are unable to account for the amount in question because we have not received the relevant information from the Ministry of Finance in order to analyze and report to the citizens of Ghana. So we are not able to account because the ministry has not been able or has failed to provide information that we have requested.
Any explanation as to why the government, the Ministry of Finance, cannot provide that information?
As at now, as we speak now, we have not had any official information from the ministry. Just to accept to say that we had requested on several occasions this information prior to releasing our report.
Right.
And we had an occasion where we even organized a validation meeting on our preliminary findings, which we shared with the ministry and other related institutions that report to PIAC. So we had this validation meeting and we made it known to everybody in that meeting that we are still waiting on the ministry's data in order to do our analysis and report to the people of Ghana as mandated by law. We waited for the ministry. They committed to give us the information at some point. They stated the date. We waited, it didn't come. We stayed on several other days waiting for that, it didn't come. We prompted them, there was no response. So and we had no choice than to report. But again, this is not the first time it's happening. So we were not, it's something that we have seen before and we have seen it again.
So just final question to you, if you could do it in a minute for us, what is at risk now that we don't have that information? What kind of risk are we putting ourselves in?
The risk is that we are not able to know how much petroleum revenue has done for us, at least for this portion of the year, which is an affront to accountability and transparency, which is in fact the bedrock of the whole Petroleum Revenue Management Act. It is built around the spirit of accountability, transparency for citizens of this country. And I think that is what is at risk now. At the moment, we are not aware. The citizens cannot tell. Okay. So it marks the whole idea of transparency and accountability.
Thank you very much for highlighting this. Very worrying. Noble Wajat there, chairman of PIAC, speaking to us. That's Business Live tonight. Thanks for watching.